Who are the world's most interesting people? And what fascinating, groundbreaking, incredible things can they teach us? In this new series, I leave our Science of People lab to interview my favorite authors, experts, and celebrities for them to share their best people hacks, social skills, and stories. And let me tell you, they have some juicy tips. This is a new series I'm calling The World's Most Interesting People.
So welcome to the world's most interesting people. Today, I am so lucky and so excited to have Dr. Paul Zak on the show. He is a neuroeconomist, which we're going to talk about what that is in a second, a teacher, a researcher, and author of one of my favorite books, Trust Factor. Dr. Zak, thanks so much for being on here today with me.
Vanessa, you're awesome. I'm so happy to be on with you.
Oh my goodness, I always get such a warm and fuzzy feeling, which I think is on purpose, which we're going to talk about. First of all, you're a neuroeconomist. What is that amazing title? Can you explain that to us?
Yeah, what the heck? So I know you have never made a bad decision in your life.
Never.
But your brother-in-law who was sending money after an email from a Nigerian prince, like, what's the deal with that?
Yes.
So I helped start this field called neuroeconomics about 15 years ago that measures brain activity while people make decisions. Some of those decisions may involve money, they may involve other people, but they give us insights into why people are weird. By that I mean, in the same situation, 20 people do 15 different things. So we see that in high variation brain behavior or brain activity. So that tells us where that weirdness comes from, which is sort of cool.
So you're basically studying the weird forces that drive people, kind of?
Which is coming from your brain, right? Not your elbow or your knee. And of course, it depends on your external environment, your history, your memories, the people around you. And so trying to nail down all those factors that explain that high variation in weirdness is something my lab's been doing for a long time, because it is the most interesting question, right?
Yeah.
We're totally normal, but the guy across the street, what's the deal? We
Right.
want to know.
Well, I'm all about predicting behavior too. And I actually discovered your work originally with your work on oxytocin, and you are in my book, which I'm so, so grateful for. Originally, you were one of the first people to really start looking at oxytocin. It was kind of this unnoticed molecule, a little bit underestimated maybe. And in your book, in the Moral Molecule, you talked about how you sort of looked at this molecule for the first time. Can you walk me through, Edison, when he discovered the light bulb, what was your discovery process? Was it an aha moment? How did you discover that there was something here with oxytocin?
Total aha moment. So I had been working on how trust affects economic performance and was building mathematical models and testing those. At the same time, working on why parents invest so much effort and energy into their children, kind of separate research projects. And then I ended up being on a van from Reno, Nevada, going an hour away to some scientific conference with a whole bunch of mountain bikers and then one nicely dressed person. And the nicely dressed person was the amazing anthropologist, Helen Fisher. And so, who I didn't know, but I said, "You're the only person wearing normal clothes. You must be going to my conference." We're talking about what I was working on. And she said, "Have you ever heard of oxytocin?" I said, "No, never heard of it." This is maybe 1999, 1998. And so I go out to my hotel and I'm like, PubMed, what the hell is oxytocin? Huge animal literature and nothing done in humans outside of reproduction, which I wasn't interested in. So it was a total aha moment. So when I saw what they were doing in animals, I'm like, oh, that's the mechanism. If only there were a way to test that in humans, the acute response of oxytocin, and there wasn't. So we had to work on, figure out some methodology. But once you have this tool, you can ask all kinds of cool questions, which we've been doing for a long time now.
So you'll have to explain. So what is oxytocin? Why is it so important? I talk a lot about it in my work based on your work. Why should we be obsessed with it? That's what I want to know.
Right. So it's one of about 200 chemicals that the body makes that's active in the brain. In fact, it's made in the brain. And it does a bunch of things like every other neurochemical. It has lots of effects. But what we showed was that essentially when someone interacts with you in a positive way, usually your brain produces oxytocin and motivates you to treat them in a similar positive or kind way. So it's kind of like the biological basis for the golden rule. If you're nice to me, most of the time my brain makes oxytocin. That reduces my physiologic stress, makes me more empathic, improves immune function, and now I'm connecting with you. So if we think about how humans live in this sea of strangers that we're cast into, we can only do that if we have something in our heads that say, Vanessa safe, Scott clearly not, right? So I have to have something that just says, roughly, who do I want to be around and get the interaction, the value of that interaction with, and who should I be avoiding? And oxytocin seems to be that key signaling molecule that says, yeah, interact with these folks.
Mm-hmm. So let me get this right. So if I'm in an interaction and I'm meeting new people, like let's say a networking event, I walk in, I'm a little bit anxious, right? I don't know anyone. I'm meeting a bunch of people for the first time. My goal is to try to create oxytocin to make me feel more calm, or I don't know if it increases calmness, but also really to make me feel bonded with the people I'm interacting with. Is that kind of how it works?
It is. And so the difficulty from what you say is exactly right, except the difficulty is you can't get your own brain to make it. You need a social stimulus to cause it. So how do you do that? You have to initiate. You have to go, hey, I'm a little uncomfortable here. Maybe I feel a little weird because I only know like one person in this big room, but I'm going to try to reach out and see if I can show kindness to others, have them connect to me, and then, reduces the physiologic stress that makes us wary of strangers. So the kind of key takeaway perhaps for viewers is that someone has to initiate this process. So here's a concrete example. Some years ago, I decided I would be an elevator talker, right? So it's a very weird thing to be standing there. We're aware the other humans are in this box with us for 30 seconds or whatever. So I just say hello to people in the elevator, and half the people are really freaked out, which makes me happy. And the other half, you have these great conversations like, hey, what are you doing here today? You're in a hotel, you're in a building. And so you have these really like amazing, on the airplane, same thing. I met my wife on an airplane, so I started talking to her. So,
you never know who you're going to meet. Wait, this is actually, so I remember when we got together for coffee when you came to Portland, and you were telling me, I think, about a great conversation you had with your Uber driver. And you were like, oh, I had this great conversation. I learned so much. So is this kind of a modus operandi? Do you always make sure that whenever you're with another human, you are seeking out oxytocin or connection, because you know that if you don't create it, it might not be created back for you? Is that kind of a way that you do it?
Yes to that. I don't think I've thought that through as carefully as you just said it. But what I have learned in all these years is that our brains are made for connection, and we need connection to be healthy and happy. And so, so now and I'm a huge introvert, so it's not my nature to go and like, rah, rah, rah. But what I find is that I have the most interesting interactions, and I have all these nice people like you who reach out to me, and I always try to meet with them because something weird, crazy, interesting happens, and occasionally there's a stalker and I have to avoid the knife, but
only occasionally. Only a small hazard of being a neuroeconomist.
Right.
So you actually mentioned something interesting. It's a little bit off topic. You said, I always try to have a conversation in an elevator. What is your go-to opener in an elevator? So if people watching, this is my challenge for people watching. If you are brave enough, and remember that Dr. Zach just said he's not an extrovert. So even if you're an introvert watching, could you maybe try for the next 7 days that whenever you're in an elevator or in an Uber or on the subway or with someone, could you try seeking out or stimulating the oxytocin? Dr. Zach, do you have an opener that we could use for that? Do you have one that you use all the time?
We're such twins, Vanessa.
I know we are.
Let's use Paul. I don't want to Dr. Zach. So that's what I think too. When I talk to people about this, try it for a week. It's not going to kill you. And after a week, you'll either know if you really hate this or like it, if it's working for you or not, and then continue or not. It's up to you. So a week once is not enough, right?
Yeah. I
use the best opening line ever existing on the planet, which is, hello. Hi, how are you? That's it.
You are actually so right. There was research, and I forgive me, I don't know off the top of my head who did it, but they actually looked at pickup lines, and they found the most effective pickup line is just, hi, how are you?
Right.
Just that. So you just say, hey, how are you? And they usually say, hey, good, thanks. You?
Right. And you say, well, what are you doing here? We're in this little box. So I was in an elevator recently with some super tall women who were talking in some Germanic-y language. And I had just come back from Amsterdam. And I said,
and you're tall, by the way. You're tall. So if you think they were tall, you're tall.
Oh, I love the Dutch because they're all tall like me. So you've been there. So anyway, I said, are you guys speaking Dutch? I'm sorry to interrupt. And they said, yes. And we just came in from wherever, Amsterdam, and we're here. Blah, blah, and we had this conversation and hop by. And my little 20-minute ride, 20-second ride, went gangbusters away. They all smiled. I smiled. It was a nice interaction. And I remember it. So as opposed to being in a box in which I have no memory, I'm looking at my phone, unfortunately or fortunately, we are gregariously social creatures. We need to connect. So take the opportunity to get your own health benefits by connecting to people around you. And you might meet a cute girl or guy to marry too.
You met your wife on a plane, which is amazing. So that's a side benefit here, everyone, is you might meet your soulmate. Wait, okay, let's say that someone wants to stimulate oxytocin. What are like the 3 or 4 fastest ways I know it's all social. Is it eye contact? Does it have to be touch? Is it like closeness? What are like the kind of ways that someone say, okay, I want to actually stimulate this chemical for myself? How should they do it?
Right. Great question. And so this is the brain hack, right? We want to get to. So, the one of the factors that inhibits oxytocin release is stress. So you don't want to stress someone out. So we showed that touch releases oxytocin. So Vanessa, that I hug everybody. I just put a hand and say, look, I hug everybody, and I hug them. But I pre-announce. You don't want to be grabbing people. That's not good. No sexual harassment. That's not cool, right? So other things are any kind of movement we do together. So dancing, exercising as a group, all that tends to release oxytocin as well, which is interesting.
That's why I like Zumba.
Zumba's awesome, but you're in a group, right? So now you have this kind of group bonding.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, exactly. So music will do it. So engaging music. So again, oxytocin increases our sense of empathy. So once we have a story, movies will do it. So we've done a lot of work on movies and commercials. So this, think of this neurologically. You're watching a movie. At the end of the movie, the boy gets the girl and you're crying in the theater.
Yeah.
What the hell, right? Neurologically, that's weird because you're cognitively intact. You know where you are. You know it's a fictional story. You know these are real actors, and yet you can't help it. So that reveals our social nature. So that may be the one way you can self-induce your own oxytocin release. Well, there's one other, but we'll leave that go. And for people who have relationships, sex. So sex also will release oxytocin.
Yeah.
Eating food.
I always just call that bow chicka wow wow. That's what I was just saying.
There you go.
In my book, I have a little bullet that just says bow chicka wow wow. People know what I mean. So music, dancing, stories, touch. How about eye contact, mutual smiling?
Get connecting with the gaze. So I want to look at you, not look at my device, but actually make eye contact with you. Again, not too much because then it gets creepy. So, but I think really it's about being present for someone. So this is kind of what I've applied to my personal life, which is being fully present for the people around you. And then the next step is to really be of service to those people. So one thing I try to do is, again, focus my attention and give someone the gift of full attention to them, number one. But number two, end every conversation with the word service, right? So we're finishing up our conversation, Vanessa. So I want to continue to be of service to you. Mm-hmm. It's a pleasure. I like talking to you. I like hanging out with you and Scott, and it's great. So that's what I want to do, is continue this conversation.
So you actually did something interesting. You use the word to trigger the exact emotion. And I noticed also you tend to sign your emails hugs.
Yeah.
Right? Which is like, we're even emailing and I'm like, oh, hugs. Like, even though we're not actually in person, I think that I feel that, like, just the mention of it, I think brings the memory of that. Is that possible? That could also trigger it, even just the memory?
We've looked a little at that and it seems to do it. I mean, more weekly than getting a hug in person, but our brains save energy, as you know, by using memories to tell us what the appropriate behavior is. So once we've established that pathway and the guy gives you hugs, then I can reestablish the activation in your brain by just using that word. So I do think the words are very important. Here's a simple rule I use for the viewers, which is oxytocin is the chemical that connects us to others. It's the chemical of love.
Yeah.
So I try to take every interaction and make sure that adds love to the world. So I call it the love plus rule. It's real simple. We're interacting. I want to make sure that a little more love was created in the world. And someone's got to create that. And so let's just own that part. That's what we're made to do, is connect to others, to love others in the philia sense often, right? So just to be a great friend, to be a great human, and to serve others. And as you know, then everyone reciprocates, and
it's a cycle. And this is our next action step. So our first action step in this video is to try for 7 days talking to someone in an elevator, in an Uber, when you're standing next to someone. The second action step, and I love this idea of being open-hearted, being of service, thinking to yourself, can I add some kind of love or oxytocin to all of my interactions, whether that's signing off on an email using hugs, or using service at the end of your emails or your calls, your interactions. That's your second action step. We're gonna get one more by the end of this video. I like the rule of 3. I always like the rule of 3. So the other thing I wanted to ask you about, you do amazing research experiments. You do them for your university, you do them for companies. Do you have a favorite? I know that you're gonna tell me that you don't have a favorite because it's like picking a favorite child. You do?
I have 2 I want to mention real briefly. One,
tell me.
We did an experiment. Once they started doing the oxytocin work and really looked at not only the factors that induce the brain to make oxytocin, but what inhibits that as well. So why don't we always get this effect? We studied people in the US and Western Europe, what we call the weirds, right? Western educated, healthy individuals.
I've never heard that.
Oh, no. Okay. So it's like a term of art, a Western educated, industrial, I don't know, something, research subjects. So we don't know that it's really generalized. So I thought, I need to go to as far away from the developed world as possible to do a study to see if this is really a universal effect, because we just don't know. Mm. And lo and behold, NHK TV in Japan, which is public television in Japan, was doing a show on human evolution, asked me if I would design an experiment for them on the evolution of social behaviors. And I thought, aha, now I have someone who will sponsor me. So we went to the rainforest of Papua New Guinea, which is a place with 800 distinct languages, these very little isolated tribes, and with an anthropologist from Japan and lots of permissions. And I set up a medical hut and I took blood before and after. These indigenous people involved did a ritual they do. It's a kind of a war dance. Took blood before and after. They'd never been to a doctor dentist, never seen their blood flow into a tube. And it was the FUBAR experiment. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong. And so basically I got trapped there for a couple of days doing nothing in the rainforest. No running water, no electricity, no bathrooms, like you are. And at first I was like so stressed out. And then these people are touching me and like, oh my God, my hands. I'm like, oh, there's paper. I mean, there's nothing. So, but then I had the most amazing experience in which I really connected to my tribe. They kind of adopted me and I really fell in love with these people. And it just changed my life. Like, I'm connecting from people from the Stone Age. I don't even speak their language and I care about them. How stupid are we if we can't connect to our next door neighbors and people we speak to? So that was the first. The second, very briefly, was also for NHK TV just a couple of months ago. They were doing a show on the divorce epidemic in Japan. So a lot of middle-aged women are divorcing their husbands for reasons that you can imagine. Not affectionate, work too much, don't help around the house, and they live forever. So the woman's thinking like, I can't do 40 more years with this guy. Like, I can't take it. Mm. So we went there and we, as you know, have developed now these wearable sensors that measure immersion and experience in real time, and actually got a baseline on couples on how connected they were to each other, and then gave them exercises to help strengthen their relationship. And to see these people who had said to camera, these women, for the last 2 years I've been thinking about divorcing my husband, go, oh my God, like they were crying. Like, I can't believe my husband really cares about me. So it means, even for relationships, you have to work at it, and so,
And the work can help. It's like from that study, you gave them exercises, right? They didn't think there was any hope left, then there was.
Right, exactly right. So cooking's not cooking. Going to dinner is not going to dinner. We had this old couple who were sweet. We took them to dinner. We're filming this all. We have the sensors on them, and they're sitting like across the table from each other. I'm like, excuse me. Sit next to each other. I'm not saying you got to hold hands the whole time, but at least, be kind of touching your elbows or something. Like, so I mean, they're very Japanese, but we do it too. The kind of Western European, like space. I don't want to involve anybody.
And what happened? Did they warm up to each other, that couple?
The woman honestly was quite resentful because the husband had made her move every year. Not made her, but his job did. Yeah. And he was a sweetheart of a guy, and he was off the charts, crazy attached to his wife, and she was just holding on to resentment. So I think they have a little work to do. The younger couple we worked with, I mean, we made great progress immediately. And then one of those things, by the way, a faculty member of mine, a friend of mine at Claremont Graduate University, a faculty member, was at that couple's wedding. They're like, oh, we know this guy from Claremont. And I'm like, so we called him up, like from Tokyo. I'm like, hey, do you remember these people? Like, oh yeah, I was at their wedding. I know they were in a class of mine. And so we all know each other, right? So if we all know each other, we're all connected to each other, let's share the love, right? Whenever possible.
Yeah. So this actually brings me right into my next question. I have two more big questions, and they're big ones. So the first one is, you have studied humans in your lab. You've been working with these couples. You've watched transformation. You've watched not transformations happen. What's something that you used to believe, but now, given all your work, you no longer believe?
That's a great question. You asked me that question in email, and I thought of something to say. Yeah, I think when you have a lot of letters after your name, first of all, you have to be sort of insecure. You have to go to school for so long to get so many letters. So once you get beyond that, we're kind of trained to think if you don't have a bunch of letters after your name, you probably aren't that informed. And what we've tried to do in my lab is create a space where there's no hierarchy. I don't have an office. I just move around. I'm not the boss of anybody, honestly. And we want the freshmen, undergraduates, we want the graduate students in philosophy or art or whoever's visiting the lab to have equal voice in everything. And it's amazing when you create that environment, the things you learn from people. Sometimes the most naive questions are so profoundly interesting and deep. Yeah. And so I think it's really that, education is great, and I'm an educator, but education and knowledge are not always correlated. So I think it's embracing real diversity in people's backgrounds and thought, and people are really weird, but weirdness is really interesting.
I might title this video studying the human behavior of weird. It might be happening with that, because I'm all about it. Okay, well, speaking of weird, in the last few years, as you've been studying people, has there been anything that either weird things you've noticed or experiments where you could give a tip to us? I hope this is going to be our final action step for this video. Is what have you learned about people? I know that you've learned so much, but if you had to share one piece of advice or one strategy for how you interact, what would you tell us newbies who are just starting to research?
I would say no one's normal. Right? So we run an experiment. There's an average in the data, but the variation swamps that. And so if we expect our spouses, our friends to behave in similar ways, it just ain't happening, right? So for most of the interesting things we do, our brain is so subtly adaptive that there's no reason we should be consistent. And so, if your roommate or your spouse or your friend is cranky one day, don't commit the fundamental attribution error and say, bad person. Just go, oh, probably having a bad day. What's the balm for that? More love, right? So, oh, you must be having a bad day. So here's the tip that I do is not only do I try to act on that, but I just call out the emotion I see in people, and it gives me a chance to have a much deeper connection. So I'd say, oh, Vanessa, you look happy, sad, tired, worried. What's going on today? As opposed to, hi, how are you? Good, how are you? Walk away. Just articulate the emotion you see in someone and kind of jump into, let's really focus on the 5 minutes we have together, or 10 minutes or an hour. Let's make that as valuable as possible. And to do that, I've got to be aware of your emotional state. And it seems a little bit odd, but when you start doing it, you find how much people value that connection, that, oh, you noticed I was having a bad day, or noticed I was having a great day.
Yeah.
And then the question is then why? Like, oh, you're walking on air. What just happened? Oh, Vanessa, you just found out you're pregnant.
Yeah.
Right. And now you get to the conversation. Oh, guess what? 2 months ago, I just found out I'm pregnant. I'm not even showing. How did you? I'm like, well, you're glowing. I can just see it. You're not pregnant, I'm sure. But, something like that would be like, oh my God, this person is so plugged in to me. They're so present. They're not just distracted. Right. So that's the third takeaway.
Okay, that's my favorite takeaway. I think this is the perfect place to end this interview. So one thing that I am always talking about is snapping out of autopilot. And what Paul is talking about here is not going through interactions like we're zombies, right? Hey, how are you? Hope all is well. Yeah, have a good day, right? In our emails and our phone calls, when we see people in the hallways, I think the greatest gift we can give people is adding value and being awake for them. If we're out of autopilot, it often snaps people out of autopilot as well. And that's where you have the best interactions, the best conversations, the most emotional connections. And so I am so, so grateful for that last action steps. You had 3 in this video. 7 days of real connecting in elevators. We said, mention that you're coming with service, end on hugs, would you say a love adder? Was that it?
Yeah, love plus is the
love
word.
Plus. And then lastly, see if you can snap people out of autopilot by mentioning the actual emotion that you notice, whether that's good or bad. You're showing someone, I truly see you, and I want to see you and accept you for that. Dr. Zach, any final words, anything that people should check out? Trust Factor, the moral molecule, anything else you're working on that you want to drive our viewers to?
Oh, tons of stuff on pauljzach.com, and we'll have some new exciting stuff coming out in January. So January we'll have a big release of something new and exciting. So you know about it, but I'm not telling everybody else until January. So
it's a very, very good surprise. So we will put links below the video so you can see links to his book, links to his website. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Dr. Zach, for being here, and we'll see you on our next installment.
Bye,
everyone.